Hi, I'm Shannon Janssen, a real estate agent in Portland, Oregon with Coldwell Banker Bay. Recently, the National Association of Realtors, NAR, agreed to new rule changes around real estate commissions as part of a lawsuit settlement in March. The lawsuit asserted real estate agents were price fixing their commissions, so NAR has agreed to some new rules with the intent of increasing transparency around commissions and how real estate agents get paid. These new rules took effect August 17th and become law in Oregon January 1st of 2025. There are two primary changes. The commission amount that a seller is offering to a buyer can no longer be shown on the MLS. And in order for a real estate agent to show a home to a buyer, they must have a signed buyer's representation agreement, no exceptions. No one knows entirely how this is going to play out for buyers and sellers over the course of the next few weeks or even years. But today, I want to go over how this has worked in the past for both buyers and sellers, how it should be working go forward, and some advice to buyers to proceed with caution since they may be the most at risk with these changes. Let's start with how these changes affect sellers. Here's how it has worked in the past. A seller signs a listing agreement with a listing agent and negotiated commissions for both the listing agent and an amount to be given to a buyer's agent. At closing, the commissions were paid through the listing agent's brokerage and then shared with the buyer's agent for bringing a buyer. This pre-negotiated amount was published in the MLS and on all the other online sites and was visible to everyone. Well, why was it done this way? Ultimately, sellers have more money to pay for commissions since they generally have equity, and buyers are already tasked with coming up with a down payment and a majority of closing costs. The problem was, buyers rarely understood how their agents were getting paid since the money was paid at closing through another brokerage. Here is how things look for sellers now to ensure all commissions are negotiable and be within the spirit of what the ruling is trying to accomplish. Now, sellers sign a listing agreement with their listing agent and negotiate a commission to be paid to just their agent. Sellers receive an offer that may or may not ask for credits to pay the buyer's agent's commission. This now becomes another term and point of negotiation to review in any given offer. Sellers can say no to offering a credit or a concession for commissions, just as they can say no to any other term of an offer, but it's a negotiation. Sellers should know that an unwillingness to concede a credit, just like an unwillingness to concede on price, may limit their buyer pool or make the home unaffordable for some otherwise willing and able buyers. There is a lot of discussion right now and instances where listing agents are still pre-negotiating commissions with their sellers and advertising this as they're in their marketing as a BAC percentage, and this is allowed. The only place listing agents are not able to advertise this offer of compensation to a buyer's agent right now is in the MLS. However, I would caution this practice since there could be changes to that in the near future, and it's just not within the spirit and the intent of this settlement. And it's not the best thing for the seller. The best practice is to get out of the mindset of pre-negotiating buyer's agent commissions with sellers. Ensure that sellers are aware that many offers may still ask for this concession and that it's just another term of an offer that should be reviewed and entertained as with anything else. That is what is best for sellers. Now let's talk about how these changes are affecting home buyers. First, let's look at how things were done in the past. In the past, buyers called an agent, clicked on Zillow, clicked on Redfin, and went and saw one home or 20 that may or may not have resulted in writing an offer, and no contracts were signed between the buyers and the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent services were often advertised as being free because the buyer's agents were most often being paid by the seller's agents at closing. The work was never free, but it led to a lot of confusion on who and how and what was getting paid. This didn't happen all the time because great buyer's agents will almost always do a sit down with a buyer to review the process and the skills they bring to their table prior to showing a home. But even then, formal contracts were almost never involved. So here's what this looks like now for buyers. Buyers want to start a home search, they must sign a buyer's representation agreement with a buyer's agent. The buyer's representation agreement outlines the parties involved, the terms or timeline of the agreement, the type of property a buyer is searching for, and the commission to be paid. Buyer's rep agreements are not something new, but they have not been widely used and were not previously required. Any agent caught in the act of showing a home without this agreement now, at least in the RMLS, could be hit with a $5,000 fine. Open houses are the exception since the agents hosting the open houses technically represent the sellers. However, if you as a buyer meet an agent in an open house, you will need to sign a buyer's rep agreement even for a day to go tour another home with that agent. Sounds simple? But this is where I have pause for concern and would like to tell any potential buyers to just really proceed with caution. There are two big things to note here in this buyer's rep agreement, and it's the timeline and the commission amount to be paid. Let's start with the timeline. I would strongly encourage you as a buyer to not jump into a long-term contract with an agent until you know they are a good fit. Start with a non-exclusive agreement or interview agents in advance of your home search and compare and contrast their experience and skills. Date before you get married. Now the commission. You are agreeing to pay this commission to your agent. In many cases, this will continue to be paid for by the seller of a home, but if it's not, you will need to come up with the extra funds to pay for this commission at closing. Reminder, it's all negotiable. But here is some additional advice to buyers. The buyer's agent commission discussion almost always leads to the question, can I just go to open houses and work directly with the seller's agent? The news has told me this will save me money. Yes, you can go find a house on your own and ask to work directly with the seller's agent. But you should know that the seller's agent is on the seller's side. They already have a contract with them, and that's who their fiduciary duty is to. Finding the home is only a small portion of what a great buyer's agent does. When it comes time to write an offer and start negotiations, you are going to want an agent working on your behalf. With a great buyer's agent, you are paying for their experience and expertise to save you money. There are 3 key points in a home purchase where a good buyer's agent is going to save you money now and or in the future. Number 1, inspections. Knowing which inspections to book and having the connections to get follow-up inspections done and get quotes from contractors on how much any given repair is actually going to cost. This information can also be used to negotiate with sellers. Number 2, understanding things that can affect future property value. This can be anything from backing onto a busy road to buying into a community with a poorly run HOA. And number 3, keeping track of timelines to ensure you don't miss deadlines and especially don't lose your earnest money. So to recap, there are 2 key changes in the real estate industry. Number 1, buyers must have a signed buyer's representation agreement to tour a home with a real estate agent. And number 2, offers of compensation cannot be published anywhere in the MLS. I hope you found this helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have now or in the future as your real estate expert and advisor.